All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Rated M for Matures weekly podcast. Let's see if we can get through this one without any technical difficulties. We tried this again about 20 minutes ago, and for whatever reason, it didn't seem like it went out. So we're gonna do this again for the first time. So I am Andy Man. With me, I got my partners in crime. I got Matt Man.
Yo.
And we got Phil Stop.
So,
what up? Keeping it gender neutral this week, I see.
absolutely. People were like, Phil, why you gotta call people out? And I'm like, I'm not calling anybody out. What are you talking about? So I figured, to avoid that situation this time, we're just gonna go with something kind of, on the level.
Nice.
Nice.
All right. So this week, we decided with Halloween coming up here on Monday that it would be a good opportunity to sit down and chat a little bit about horror games. So, gentlemen, we're going to just get right to it. What makes a good horror game for you?
For me, like the horror game that best pretty much exemplifies being scared, and that's the kinds that like where you're like in an environment where you don't know what's going on. You have very limited information. There's like noises and stuff that you can hear, but you don't actually see anything on screen. It's like that type of horror is the kind that I like in games, and that's like games like the traditional, the old schoolers like Silent Hills and Resident Evils. That type of horror is my bag.
To me, it's all about immersion and environment, because you want to be so engrossed on what you're playing and what you're watching. And then if there's any change in the scenery, it's like, that type of reaction is what you want to get from a good horror game. Because if it doesn't make you react that way, doesn't make you jump out of your boots, then they haven't touched that special scared button.
Yeah.
Sweet. That reaction, I think, may be the best reaction I've seen on really from you in the almost 10 years that I've known you. That was quite entertaining.
Well, when I'm not at work, I could be me, and you guys get to see the fulfillness that people normally enjoy when I'm around them,
It's been a while.
I'm a fulfilling person,
It's been a while since I've heard that the Phil puns being thrown out there.
Yeah.
Can honestly say, haven't missed them. Have not missed them at all.
You never really were filling the puns from before.
You stop that right now.
But since we have this podcast, I could give you your weekly fill of things of the full Phil experience.
It hurts my soul. You're hurting my soul on that one.
Well, it's too bad you're not a gender, because then you wouldn't have a soul, and then that wouldn't be a problem. But anyway, moving on. So within the horror genre, like help me figure out like what is the horror genre like, and not just like in general within the game space or even in movies for that matter, because I mean it's Halloween, is whatever. But like within the genre, but specifically for you guys, like what do you guys consider the horror genre? Since you guys obviously know much more about this than I do, because horror is just definitely not my thing.
Yeah, the horror is has always been my jam. I think even in the old school movie days with the Friday the 13th, Hellraisers, Puppet Masters and whatnot. So I've loved the horror scene. I have that love for that being scared type of thing. I think like what makes horror just that is what you're seeing is horrendous. It's horrific that you can't fathom that actually being really happening. You look at stuff like in like Silent Hill, you look at stuff like that where stuff happens that you know shouldn't be happening, but it's right in your face.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's that unknown known type of thing where you know something's out there, but you don't know what it is, where it is,
So
or
it's
it's coming at you.
it's like that psychological intensity.
Exactly. It's more the mental factor than the actual visual sense. At least
Okay.
that's, to me, that's what makes horror that. It's that mental breakdown
Okay.
of oneself.
So almost like the psychological intensity. Goddamn, words are hard today.
Exactly. Words suck.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's basically in that sense there, which messes with you when you look at horror movies. That's a lot of key points on there is to mess with the main character. It's to psych them out, to believe something that isn't there or is there, to change perceptions of what they're seeing, that type of thing. So it's all about just breaking down one's own like mental health, I guess you can say.
Okay, I gotcha. I think I'm picking up what you're putting down. Mr. Phil, stop. What do you got?
See, now for me, because I'm a man's man.
There we go.
You know, and as a
Here we
man,
go.
you don't get scared. There's no fear. You know, there's an old saying that the longer a man's beard is, you know, how fearless that man is. And I got a pretty good looking beard.
You do realize that you're wearing a black shirt with a black microphone right in front of you, covering.
Yeah, I know I failed. Okay, don't call me out on it, man. I don't like colors, man.
I just want to take this opportunity to point out that when Phil got hired into his current job, he attempted to look more professional, and he shaved his beard to be more professional, not realizing that when he showed up for his interview, all three people had beards longer than the one that he has right now.
This is true facts.
True facts. True facts.
So, as I was saying, as a man's man, you want to test what makes you jump, what makes you flinch, what gets you out of your normal stance. Because, you know, normally you'd be like this. I ain't scared. No.
I'm afraid of no ghosts.
What is that, a clown? I ain't scared of no clown. You know, and you have to. For me, it's what makes you jump out of that. You'll be saying like this, and all of a sudden you say, "Holy shit! What the fuck is that?"
Exactly.
And your eyes get, because I got small eyes, right? You know, people think I'm sleeping when I'm awake. That's how small my eyes are. But when after you saw what you saw, and then your eyes are like this, you see that, Charlie? You see that? That's a different thing.
Right.
You know that man has been scared out of his normal stance. He saw some shit that rattled his boots. You know, and that's scary, you know.
Right. So for you, that's more or less falling in that visual sense. Like you see something that shouldn't be. You're not sure of it, and then when it becomes clear, you're like, "Oh, fuck that, I'm out."
Yeah. It's about the environment you're placed in, and
right.
Like I'm gonna paint a picture for you, right?
Here we go.
You're
gonna be all in black.
You're a homie walking down the streets late at night, right?
Nope.
And you're walking. Things are cool.
Mm.
Yeah. My house is around the corner. I'm cool. Snapping my fingers, you know. Yeah, I'm hard. Yeah. And then you start hearing something grind on the asphalt. It's
that
like
could be a skateboard, though.
Yeah. It could be anything, right? But you're like,
oh, you mean like a scratch, more of a grind?
A scraping.
Right. Then you start questioning yourself. What the hell is that? You start making assumptions. Oh, it's just a skateboard. You know, there's some punk over there playing a skateboard or whatever. But then it starts to get louder. You know, all of a sudden you're like, all right, you know, that ain't normal, man. But you're still trying to act like you're cool, so you don't look over your shoulder, but you start walking faster, you know. And then as you get closer, you start hearing things that are extra, like, ooh. And you're like, Charlie, is that you? And you realize that you're walking down the street by yourself, you know.
Mm.
And then it starts getting closer and closer, and the noises get louder, And then you start running, and you're huffing and you're puffing. But for me, it's more like this.
Because moving at full speed.
Yeah, because I'm like an action flick and like this pose. Will I run? But anyway, and it's that sense that where you don't know what is going on because you start hearing things. It's a lot like what Matt was saying, where you know what should happen, but things aren't happening the way they should. It's a sense of normality. It's very like you were saying, also very psychological. That because when things are normal, you know what you're expecting, but then all of a sudden something scary is gonna shake that box like you're in a snow globe and just like wreck your shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about right there. When it comes to that horror, is like when your whole mentality gets flipped upside down. You know what I mean? That's when you know you got a good horror going on. When you got people who are hardcore jumping out their seats, or not even that. There are even some instances where you're just frozen like a deer in the headlights. Like you can't believe it that you're that it's getting you that good type of thing. So these are the quintessential aspects of horror. And to this day, I mean, even like in the way back in the past, people have been following this same type of like flow chart for scares, where it's like put someone in an environment that they're not used to, make it dark, put noises in random areas, tell them they have to survive. That's it. That's every horror movie ever.
And Walking Dead.
Oh, well, I think Walking Dead's a touchy subject for some people, since the internet has ruined it for everyone.
Well, for some. So for me, I think what defines horror is a combination of several things. So first of all, you have the suspense aspect. You have the intensity. You have like some of the stuff that you guys were talking about with something being out of place, whether that be like a clown in the middle of the woods, or something along those lines. The thing that goes bump in the night. And I think psychological horror, to an extent, I think makes a lot of sense. But what definitely goes along with that, to me, is killing, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, is the cheerleaders in the woods at the beach house. They get killed. Like, for me, that type of thing constitutes the horror genre. Is blood and guts is really what comes along with horror, because for a movie, as an example, Fugitive was an extremely intense and a psychological movie, but I don't think anyone would ever consider that a horror game,
right,
or a horror movie rather. So I think it's important to create a clear distinction between something that's a action psychological thriller versus something that is specifically horror and uniquely horror, in comparison, to create that clear definition between the two.
Right, and that was something that I was going to touch upon when it came to games in general. When people say what's a good horror game to play or whatnot, and people will say, oh, any zombie game, it's a good horror, and that's not the case, because you're looking at like stuff like Call of Duty has a zombie expansion. That's not horror.
That's intense as fuck, though.
Yes, and then you got games like Dead Island and Left 4 Dead. They have zombies in them, but that's not horror either. That's an action survival, completely different things. And this goes the same lines as you were speaking on when it comes to, in the movie realm, where there's a lot of things that have certain bits and pieces of what makes horror, but that doesn't necessarily make them a horror.
I think to be a proper horror film, game, whatever, it needs to have like a couple of different elements within it to be properly classified as a horror, and that is a combination of psychological intensity, whether that's a real thing or a perceived thing, whether that's seeing something that shouldn't be there, or just the perception that there's something amiss, that there's something wrong, whether that's a combination of music or a combination of just like creating the character within the game or within the movie of like, hey, something's off, like something's going on, and just kind of setting that that stage for the person playing or the person that's in the audience watching to
Yep.
feel like something's up. It's setting that stage. So I mean, it's a combination of several things to properly be a horror game or a horror movie. I think. I mean, would you agree with that, Phil?
Yeah, absolutely. There's different elements that compose a good. I don't want to label as game or movie, but something that is horrific is going to be something that is a combination of different things, but it's mainly going to rely on the individual and what they define as scary, quote unquote, clowns.
Clowns. Fucking clowns. All right, before we move on, I wanted to take a minute. This is completely unplanned. None of you guys know what the fuck I'm doing, but I wanted to call out a very close friend of the show and a good friend of all of ours for many, many years, and that is our friend Jeff, who is watching the podcast right now and is also the designer of our logo. So I just wanted to take a minute and say thank you for watching and thank you for being a friend of the show and for designing our logo for us. It is greatly appreciated, Jeff.
Everyone, check him out. On occasion, he's said he stopped doing the streams in the past, but he does on occasion do a live stream where he does art and like 3D design and stuff like that. So check that out on occasion. We'll put links in the description below.
Yeah, we'll get his info up. We want to make sure that we give him his proper due. He's a good guy. I've known him for a long time. Me, him, and Phil go back almost 10 years between just the three of us knowing each other. And I think, Matt, you and him go back, a year or two at least, if not longer. Yeah. I think we've all been hanging out. So just wanted to take a minute to say what's up to Jeff, and we appreciate everything that you've done for us. So
what's up, buddy?
All right, anyway, moving on. So what I wanted to do is drill down a little bit more into the horror genre and create some differences specifically within some of the games and maybe bring in a little bit of backstory. So one of the most well-known games and movies as well, and one of the few movies that also, or one of the games that also has a movie that's based on it is Resident Evil. So maybe you guys could kind of drill down into that and get a little bit more specific with Resident Evil, what it is, and how it fits within the horror genre in general, both on the game side and on the movie side. So Matt, what do you got?
Okay, so first and foremost, unlike other like gaming movies that have been out, Resident Evil does have its own actual movie that's kind of gotten extremely large amount of sequels, which to me are unnecessary, but whatever. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it was
Mila Jovovich.
Pretty much. But the Resident Evil was technically based on a movie prior to the actual game that came out, and that was Night of the Living Dead. This movie came out in like the 80s, and it was the same elements that you see in Resident Evil with a mansion that's abandoned, zombies coming out of nowhere, not knowing how you're going to survive. It all came from that movie. We had the main actor who was going up to this place to pay the respects to a loved one who has passed, is attacked by what they perceive to be a homeless person, and it actually was a zombie. And then you see it kill her fiance. She gets, runs and she comes across this huge house, and she goes in there to get to for refuge, just to find out that others have also taken refuge in this place, and that these zombies are not stopping. They're going to constantly come, and they have to survive the night before they can get help in the morning. Resident Evil has that similar aspect to it to an extent. I mean, the main storyline to Resident Evil was that a STARS team got a distress call at this mansion. They go to check it out, never came back. So they send a secondary team to go find them, which is where your character you play as. And they pretty much get caught up in this complete zombie apocalypse. Well, zombies are just coming out of nowhere. They don't understand what's going on. No one told them anything type of thing. They're in the dark, with the mission at hand, because as far as they were concerned, they were just supposed to go and find this other team and get them out, and then come back later with more intel on this. But that kind of goes horribly wrong right out of the gate when their team is attacked by creatures in the night that force them to run into this mansion. It was the first to, at least in my opinion, the first to bring that type of scare horror into mainstream gaming. I mean, prior to that one, yes, there was Alone in the Dark. There was the Friday the 13th, games based on the movie and stuff like that. But this right here was the one that kind of set itself apart from the others in the aspect of the game itself. You don't have full control of your surroundings. Cameras for the characters are in set angles to where you can see down a hall, but you can't see around the corner until you're already past that corner. So then you're just as surprised as the character would be when you come around and like, oh shit, there's like 3 zombies here, or one giant monster here, and I shouldn't be here. I have nothing to defend myself. So it gave a lot to the horror genre that a lot of games nowadays use, but it was the first to actually implement that into a mainstream media, if you will. I mean, it was one of the flagships that was on the PlayStation 1 outside of Tomb Raider. It did any mention of Tomb Raider just brings a smile to Phil Stott's face.
I'm okay with it.
Everyone's okay with it. But like, yeah, it was one of those that like really brought a lot of nuances to the horror genre, with zombies, with mutations, with actual CG cinematics that brought more to it. Or more or less in this one here, it was also used live action sequences, mainly just in the opening title, which looked like a really cheesy 80s movie opening title. But what are you gonna do? Most of the cutscenes in there were CG generated, so it was one of those things that was really put out a lot of on PlayStation, because the disc can actually hold that type of information as opposed to a cartridge, which is why you don't see that much stuff on any other console. I mean, like, yeah, Sega CD had something, but it didn't really do well. It gave a lot more realism than was ever done before when it came to survival, when it came to the mental capacity. It did a lot. And then, everything just kind of, you see it roll from there, with other companies saying, hey, this Capcom did an amazing job with this series, with this game. Let's try to take it the next step further. I don't want to jump ahead too much, but when we mainly speaking on like Konami and their jump into the horror gaming world with their Silent Hill series. Fantastic stuff.
Gotcha. Phil, what do you got?
When we're talking about Resident Evil and horror, you probably only want to deal with probably Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 2, and possibly Resident Evil 0, because it maintains the same type of elements. 3, 4, 5, 6, they kind of went a different route. But looking at the first iterations of the game, it added elements that we were talking about earlier that really made you jump. And one of the big things that was about Resident Evil 1 was it took cues from movies, and it positioned the camera, like Matt was saying, in certain angles, so it felt like you were actually there. And that's one of the things that movie directors do to help immerse you into the movie, is put the camera in different locations, that we have that feeling that you can't see ahead, you can't look ahead, Whereas normally in a video game, you could, by turning the camera, you could sneak around a little bit. And the environment really played into that game's favor. The next thing that Resident Evil brought to make it a horror game was this suspense factor, where things were really quiet, and the mood was very, very dim, and then all of a sudden, things would pop out, and you would knee jerk at the reaction that was coming out at you, or the item that was coming at you, regardless of what it was, and it gave you that feeling of suspense that you don't know what's out there. The third thing that it gave you was the sense of disparity, because you're a fully capable person in this game. You have skills, you have weapons, you have ways to survive, but those ways to survive and fight back are very limited. So you couldn't fight back fully and just lay waste like a shooter, like you're a Rambo or like you're the Terminator. Just shoot stuff. You couldn't in this game.
Yeah, you're very limited to your tools.
Yeah, and your tools weren't very strong either. It's not like you're the Highlander, you just lop people's heads off. I win. The first weapons were very tough. You did very little damage, and for the most part of the beginning of the game, you're running because you knew that your weapons wouldn't affect these creatures in a very... It wouldn't do a lot of damage, so you had to just run.
Right.
So
it was like in other games where they can just shoot, and that the thing will drop. In Resident Evil, it was the first time where you can literally empty a full clip, and these certain creatures would not drop. You literally had to either completely run away or have a specific tool or weapon that can actually handle that situation. It wasn't just you can just go around and just using your little Beretta.
Run and gun, I think, is what you're getting at.
Exactly.
Yeah, in later iterations of the game, you also had to look at your environment to see if your environment could help you in that fight. And so it kind of puts you at that, made you feel like you're thinking frantically and on your feet. That, oh crap, what am I going to do? And you start looking around like you would in a normal situation. If it was happening to you right at that instance, then you would have the same feeling in that game. And that's what made Resident Evil a very important video game, is it really brought horror to video games. And just 1 and 2, though. 1, 2, and possibly 0.
Zero was a little different. I mean, it was technically like the prequel prior to the events of Resident Evil 1, but you're on a train type of scenario thing. Didn't really, yeah.
Kylie,
wow.
So,
So, yes.
Real quickly, and we don't need to get into it too deeply, but with Resident Evil, what was some of the primary differences between the game and the movie?
The game itself, are we talking about the first game and the first movie that came after it?
Yeah, to make the comparison easier, 1 versus 1.
They actually did a pretty spot on job when it came to the story of it. The mansion itself wasn't okay. Well, here's the difference. In Resident Evil, the game, your whole scenario or your whole surroundings is a giant mansion.
Yeah.
In the Resident Evil movie, the mansion was just a front, and the actual environment that they're having to go through and deal with is a underground laboratory that was built by the Umbrella Corporation, which is the corporation that caused this huge issue in the first place.
So they Hollywoodified it.
Exactly. They wanted to make it a little bit bigger because if they, in my opinion here, at least my thought process is if they went with the mansion scenario, it'd be no different from Night of the Living Dead.
Got it.
So to change things up and spice it up, especially with the tech that we had at the time of the movie was made, it made more sense to be part of the lab. The second change from the movie to the from the game to the movie was that the character you played as in the game was a regular police task force from Raccoon City. They were just your standard group. In the movie, the characters on there work for Umbrella. They were legitimate employees. They just realized that Umbrella is creating this bioweaponry that they're trying to prevent from getting out. Granted, the whole thing, things cause, a lot of different scenarios that make it hard for them to do that. But that's the storyline on that when it comes to the movie. The game wise, it was just like, we're just here to find our team that, never came back.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Phil, would you add anything to that and some of the differences between the movie and the game?
Now, for the first movie compared to the first game, the game was very. It was a horror game, whereas the movie felt more like an action movie. So
Right.
it didn't have the elements of scare. It didn't have the suspense. There was a lot of action, and you really fell in love with Mila Jovovich in this movie because she became the female action star when as far as action movie is concerned. And as far as the story is concerned, you don't really see the video game storyline and the movie storyline converge until about the second Resident Evil movie. And by then, it kind of falls into about the third Resident Evil game. So the timeline-wise between the movies and the games don't really line up that much.
Gotcha.
I think it's a great action movie.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it horror.
Now, to segue to that, Silent Hill, which also is a game and a movie, what are some of the differences? Since we're already on the subject, what are some of the differences between the Silent Hill movie and the Silent Hill game?
Okay, well, Silent Hill is my jam. I've loved that series when I first played it on the PlayStation. But the movie, the differences between the movie and the game itself, Silent Hill. First thing, the genders were swapped. In the game, you play as a man looking for his daughter. In the movie, you're the main character is a woman looking for her daughter. So that's it was a good flip. It worked. It worked very well. The elements from the movie and the game were actually relatively the same. You had the same type of the same type of town that's cursed. You had the same type of eerie fog that's everywhere, so you can't really see much. The big difference there, to get the movie going, as far as having a villain, if you will, was there was a cult that was in that town that was forever cursed with them due to an incident where they were trying to rid their town of witchcraft, of witchery. An uber religious group, if you will.
Okay.
So the way that they tried to rid this child of this like witchcraft negative thing was by basically hovering her over a fire, which obviously things go wrong. The child becomes possessed, and it causes the issues that are having with the town. In Silent Hill, the game, not so much that. It does have that same type of element of the daughter and then a doppelganger that's causing these issues. But there was more of a connection to the town with the character than there was in the movie, because the town in the movie, the main character had nothing to do with, like didn't even come from there, didn't have anything there. Silent Hill in the game, they knew the town, they've been there, they vacationed there before all hell breaks loose. Gotcha. So it was a big switch off in there. But when it came to like the types of the way they portrayed the the scare factor, it was all mental.
Okay.
Because it was always messing with your mind, because there was two realities within that movie, where like during the day, if you will, basically everything's normal, but then you hear a siren go off, and then it starts to get dark. It starts to get harder to see stuff. You start hearing things that weren't there when it was daytime. You don't know where these things came from. Again, that whole mental factor, which is what Silent Hill was always about. It wasn't about the Resident Evil style where the creatures and survival and all that stuff there. It was more of like, what is that noise? I can't see a thing. I have to continue on to get out.
Okay. Now, with that, is that different between the game and the movie, or is it consistent across both?
It's pretty consistent across both. Like, they did a really good job
And getting all of that matched up and basically keeping the kind of the root of the game in the movie and vice
exactly
versa.
Yes, they made sure that, matter of fact, if you ever get the Blu-ray edition of Silent Hill, the behind the scenes stuff where they talk about the director in the online and the commentary, he specifies that he did his homework. He played the games several times just so he can make sure he got that type of scare factor on point. So it was
interesting.
They did their homework.
Interesting. Phil, what do you think about Silent Hill? What do you have to contribute on the film and the game Silent Hill?
Silent Hill is amazing. First and foremost, it's a very, very good game. I recommend that a lot of the viewers out there, if you have not played it, to play the first two with headphones and the lights off.
Oh, it's creepy. It is the scariest shit, because the game developers designed that with the audio as a main focal point.
Interesting.
Yes.
For Silent Hill, in contrast to Resident Evil, it was more of a psychological trip. It was more mental fear, and your perception of what is real and what isn't real. I thought that the movie adaptation of the game, it hit on those elements, but it failed to connect the dots. So the story and the plot weren't that good as far as how the game did it. But
right.
the elements of scare and the psychological and the environment is what they really nailed.
Yeah, it was basically similar to Resident Evil movie. They Hollywoodified it.
Yeah,
to change things up.
Gotcha. Okay, now to move on from Silent Hill, I know Slender is one thing that's definitely garnered a lot of news or a lot of headlines within the news for a lot of reasons. Why is that? What is Slender, first of all?
Okay, well, Slender was a game that was developed by one dude. So keep that in mind. It was just one guy. He made this game, and he just pretty much put it out for free. Now the game is based on the premise of having to you're set in this kind of enclosed park-ish area, basically like a forest type, and your whole thing is to collect 8 pages that were scattered there that explain this Slender Man. Now the Slender Man is a made up fictional character who is a kind of like a ghost paranormal type of person. He has no face. He's large, extremely tall with long limbs, and he wears a suit. I'm not sure why he wears a suit, but he has a suit. And the lore behind him is that he abducts children, and anyone that comes near him, or if he's close by to any person, they experience a nausea, loud noises, and a loss of sight. They kind of start to go blind. They personify that in the game to where the Slender Man, you don't know where he's going to appear. He's generally just pops up wherever. Now, you are an average person, meaning that You only have a flashlight because you don't really know anything else. The flashlight does have a battery that dies, that will run out. Now,
As they do.
Yeah. Now, as the battery dies off, it makes it harder to see and collect the pages, and then you're going to get caught. The drawback is that as you collect pages, the intensity of how fast the Slenderman hunts you down gets greater. And using your flashlight also makes the Slenderman find you easier. So you're always
having. They can see where you are.
Exactly. It's a hell of a mind trip because it's unknown. It's the unknown factor, that mental factor of not knowing, is he going to be here? Is he going to pop up around that corner? Am I going to run into him over here? And then it starts messing with you in the audio sense, because it's recommended to play with headphones on, because there's no music to it. There's no background music. It's just your typical night
more
stuff.
Engrossing.
Exactly. So you're constantly involved. So you see, if you ever watch people play it, you personally will see them like this. Is that what? And then they collect their first page. You hear the audio cues of like this subtle boom that happens. And then you're searching, you're looking, you're trying to find. And then you start hearing a noise in this headphone, which makes you want to turn that direction. So then you turn your character to look in that direction. There's nothing there, but you still hear it. And then it subtly goes away. And then you hear it again on this side. It's designed to really mess with you in all sense of the word. And it's absolutely an amazing game that he created, and is free to play. You can literally go to his website right now and download it for free.
Interesting.
It's an amazing game. The story behind it is very engrossing. You can actually look up the Slenderman and you'll find tons of stories on him. Now, when you mentioned as far as media is concerned, there have been some negative media backlash to it, just because of certain
high school girls
pretty much trying to kill their friend because Slenderman told them to do it, type of thing.
Yep.
Not necessarily how it works. If they ever actually knew what's the whole lore, they would understand that Slenderman doesn't do that. He just kidnaps children and you'll never see them again.
Yeah. Now, Phil, have you played Slender?
I have not played Slender, but the elements of horror that are in there are pretty apparent. I mean, just from what Matt described here, you can tell that it's all about sensory.
It really gives that real factor.
Yeah, it tickles your senses through your ears primarily, and through what you see visually. I haven't played it, but you can try it out. You have
a very limited sight in that game too. So it's not only does it mess with the eye, with the ears, it messes with your eyes as well, because you don't have much to work with. But yeah,
interesting. Now, Jeff in the chat room suggests that if we're going to talk about Slenderman, we should mention Amnesia. So
Amnesia.
Real quick, because I know we're starting to run a little bit late, but let's touch on that real quick.
Amnesia's great. It's when you're talking about Slender, it's very similar to Slenderman. It's the same way. The scenario isn't quite in the forest, but you're in a castle. But you're given the same type of feeling. It's very quiet. It's very dark. You use candles instead of a flashlight. So it's darker and it has less control to it. Where you could turn on and off a flashlight, the candle or the lantern that you're carrying, you can't turn on or off. Either you put it out and throw it away, or you just leave it on. You're stuck there like this, looking down the hallway. Junior, is that you?
Being a candle, it doesn't have the same light projection, so it's only going to be for a couple of feet before it just fades out.
Yeah. But you hear the noises, you hear the yelling in that game. Holy crap!
Interesting.
Yeah. If you want to scare yourself, shitless, and you want to feel like you're helpless, you want to play Amnesia. That game is wow.
Interesting. Matt, what do you got on Amnesia, real quick?
Literally just the same thing. It gives you all those elements of you're stuck. You only have so many things to work with. Unlike Slender, your options for being able to see have a lot of weakness to them. They can go out. You can lose them. You can never find a candle again. There's a lot of things that keep it back. It's a fantastic game. Another highly recommended game. Believe you can get that on Steam right now.
Interesting. Okay, now to move on from there, another game that's very, very, very popular, especially when it comes to Let's Plays on YouTube, is Five Nights at Freddy's. So
sorry,
yeah. Go. you okay? Do you need to laugh? You need to get it out.
I'm having my own I'm having flashbacks of that game because
you're having a moment.
I've played it. It scared the shit out of me.
All right. Well, since you know it so well, let's start with Phil. Phil, have you played Five Nights at Freddy's?
I have not, and I refuse to. I'll tell you why.
Okay. Let's hear why. Here we go.
Chuck E. Cheese, right?
Yep.
Everyone loves Chuck E. Cheese. You go there, you have pizza. There's a lot of games, but there's this mouse, right? And you think he's cool because he's got all this get up. He sings with his buddies. He's cool. But what if that thing wasn't a dude inside, right? And then as you're leaving at night, as a kid, you wonder, what does Chuck E. Cheese do at night, right?
He eats all the pizza.
Five Nights at Freddy's ruined Chuck E. Cheese. Ruined it.
All right, that pretty much explains where Phil is at with regards to Five Nights at Freddy's. He ruined Chuck E. Cheese. Fucking assholes.
I could never eat it again. I'm not taking my nephew there. My nephew had just one birthday at Chuck E. Cheese.
And that was too many?
Yeah, because of Five Nights at Freddy's.
But I will point out that Chuck E. Cheese does have beer, which if you're going to be around a bunch of little kids, beer definitely helps. But anyways, Matt, Five Nights at Freddy's, what do you got?
Five Nights at Freddy's is an amazing game. I don't care what anyone says. That if you want to know about being helpless, there it is right there. You play as a security guard, working shit-ass minimum wage, and your only thing is you got this place, this Chuck E. Cheese-esque place, Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. They have animatronics. Now, Chuck E. Cheese has those too. You know, they have them on the stage. They'll tap their toes and all that stuff. Same thing. The difference here is that these animatronics actually can move around. They can actually interact with the clients that are the clientele that's at their establishments. They also tend to move around at night. So as a security, your goal is just to watch monitors, make sure shit doesn't go wrong, make sure the animatronics don't fuck up. The drawback, or what's the problem, is that at night, since the time is different, they're closed. The animatronics software that makes them run, they don't recognize anything else that is an animatronic. If they see anything that's they don't recognize, they assume it to be an animatronic out of its suit. And what they're programmed to do is to take it to a room to put them back in. Now,
interesting.
The problem with that being is that the suits that they have already have animatronics already in them. So if you're caught by these animatronics, they're going to assume that you're an exoskeleton out of its casing, and they're going to try to shove you into one.
Interesting. Sounds unpleasant.
Not the most pleasant thing. So you can't really do anything to protect yourself with it because you're just a security dude who sits in a room. That's it. You can't move. You can't wander about. You're in a room. You're in a room where there's doors that you can close, and there's a security monitor system that you can look at. The establishment they have is like apparently running on peanuts. It's doing a terrible, financially, because everything's running off one central like generator battery, if you will, that runs out of power just by looking at a monitor. Closing a door, it loses power, and you pretty much have to survive from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. So you got this large amount of window, which in retrospect, when you look at it in real time, is about like roughly 10, 12 minutes. That's a long ass time when you have animatronics that run around the entire establishment, and you don't know where they're going to be. Because the beauty of the way the game was designed is that it's all kind of like still frame pictures, if you will. So it's not like superb animations happening in these. You can look at a monitor and you'll see like
a foot.
We'll for everyone who's never seen it, we'll use the Chuck E. Cheese references here. You'll see Chucky like standing in a room staring at nothing. You turn to look at another camera just to make sure that room's fine. You go back to the camera like with like a click type of time frame. He's gone. You don't know where the hell he went. You look at a third camera. He's there now. And then you look at another camera. You see another animatronic that's out and about. You go back to the one to make sure that Chucky's not, doing anything crazy. He's gone again. He's at your door. So you got to shut doors down to prevent them from coming in. It becomes more stressful in that sense of trying to survive. It really hits on that frame of mind. Now, this is mainly I'm going on Five Nights at Freddy's 1. There are technically 5 of them now. I mean, there's 1 through 4, and then they just recently released the sister location of Five Nights at Freddy's. That's even fucking worse. Holy shit! I would not want to work there. So the whole aspect of the game itself is to keep them out until your shift is over, and that can feel like forever. If you ever want to like see some intense players,
like forever.
Oh god damn it!
Gotcha.
It can feel like a lifetime. God damn it! I can't. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. We're gonna go with it. We're gonna roll. Okay, we're doing fine. So like, it really hits you a lot on that. So fantastic games. I highly recommend all of them. I personally own them all. I've done a full gameplays of those in the past. I live streamed those on channel prior to us establishing the Rated M for Mature. But I'll have links to those videos if you want to see a full-on playthrough, because you got to go through, just as it says, 5 nights of this. And then not even that. After you beat that, it actually gives you an additional 6th night that you got to handle, in which everything is just, it's difficult.
That's just overtime. I mean, the 6th night working at Chuck E. Cheese is always just difficult.
And if you really want to go into after you beat the 6th night, you have an option to mess with the game's AI, or at least the intensity of the animatronics, in which they like to call it the 20-20-20 mode, which is additionally night 7. But you just don't get credit for it as a night. It's just like a custom game, if you will. But it's considered one of the hardest ways to play that game.
Interesting.
It's terrible. Jump scares. This solidified the jump scare as a major thing, because it's quiet. When they catch you, it gets loud really fast.
Would you call it, as far as difficulty, is it Kaizo difficult?
No. See, Kaizo is intentionally hard.
Hold on. For those that are unaware, Matt has been doing a Let's Play through Kaizo Mario, and he has become so frustrated, so angry with how difficult this game is, that he has had to walk away from the game for the short time just to make sure that he doesn't put a hole in his wall. That's how bad it's gotten.
I've come close. You can actually hear it in some of the videos. I believe there's even one point where Phil Stop was with me. He says, maybe you should put the controller down and we'll come back to this. I'm like, no, fuck it. We're going to do this live. We're going to finish this goddamn shit. I'm not going to go back and do this again.
Yeah.
And it got to the point now where right now it's on back burner, or I'm 2 levels from completing the entire game, but I have to stop because
somebody's going back.
I'm going to have to make sure I have additional controllers on deck for the amount of times I want to fling and destroy my own. It's brutal. We do have a whole complete playlist on the channel, so check that out later. It'll be funny to watch. I'll tell you that. It's funny to watch.
It's funny to watch even in the first person. But we're starting to get off track a little bit. Let's get back to the subject at hand. So next and probably the final game that we're going to cover is going to be Fatal Frame.
Ooh, Fatal Frame. That was
Matt. What do you got?
GameCube's first attempt at a horror game on its own. I believe that was done also by Konami. Yes. But this one, the big thing about this one is actually sort of based on actual events in Japan, which is where the games is settled into, where you're a person who goes to this mansion. I'm not exactly sure what brings them there. I haven't played Fatal Frame in years. The only things I can recall.
I guess that's a hint for maybe another Throwback Thursday.
Oh shit! I gotta get my hands on a cube because that's the only way you can play that properly is on the GameCube. I don't care what anyone says. If any other version that's out there, the GameCube version's the only way to go. The whole premise there is you're trying to solve these, I guess it's also a puzzle type of game as well. Phil, you know more about Fatal Frame than I do. Help me out here. I'm losing it on as far as the storyline goes.
Fatal Frame is actually made by Tecmo. To get that up really quick.
My apologies.
Tecmo.
My apologies.
But it takes place in Japan, and it deals with folklore over there, and these two twins, these pair of twins, and how they're related to a ghost. We'll just put it that way.
Easiest way to explain that one.
Yeah, that's pretty much Fatal Frame. But what makes Fatal Frame scary is you can't fight. There's literally no way to fight these things unless you have the camera, and that's why it's called Fatal Frame. Is you have to get them in the frame of the camera to vanquish them.
The camera itself is kind of possessed in the sense that it'll actually capture the ghost inside it, in the pictures themselves. What also makes it more intense is that it's not like you have unlimited photos to take. It does run out, and you have to find more rolls, if you will. And it's this old ass camera that you see in the 40s with the little flash bulb and all this other stuff.
What the fuck are you talking about, man? That shit was 80s 80s, 90s. They still have that. They still have flash bulbs. I mean, it's not as common so much anymore.
But I mean, it was the kind of camera that I'm trying to explain the best way. It looked like an accordion. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, one of those. Okay, I'm sitting here man, I can do that shit with a Polaroid, and that.
No. It would have been a lot easier if it was a Polaroid. Shit. Yeah.
So you were mentioning that you have to fight with a camera. So I immediately thought that it's not a teenager in high school if you're struggling with a camera to fight, because for whatever reason selfies are the thing now. But anyways. Moving on. Before the show, you had mentioned something that I wanted to bring up, so you could tell me what the fuck this is. Creepypasta.
Okay, so.
And remember, make it quick.
Yeah, the whole thing. Creepypasta is a condensed form of copy paste that was used on forums where people write scary stories or tell folklore stories. It was brought up with Slender because there was a competition on making a new fictional horror or scary character. This guy came up with the Slender Man using an old photo that was like black and white of a schoolyard, and you can see in the very far back corner this tall thing that's hard to see, but you can make out that it's the Slender Man. Made a whole complete story around it. That blew up into what the game is, and yeah, pretty much that. That's what a creepypasta is. It's basically a breakdown, a condensing of copy paste for creepy stories.
Interesting.
I highly recommend creepypasta. I think it's creepypasta.com, or just Google search creepypasta. There's a website where people write amazing stories, like creepy ass stories. Or if you want, you can actually check it out on YouTube. Creepypastas in general, and they actually have people who break down like the top 10 best scary story type of things. It's really a trip.
Interesting. That sounds really interesting. Almost like fan fiction to horror.
Yes, it exactly is. It's that in its entirety. It's like, yeah, if you ever read the books, Scary Stories to Chill Your Bones, that trilogy set, it's that, but ongoing.
Oh, interesting. That's cool.
Yeah.
That sounds really. I mean, for people that are into the horror genre and the horror scope in general, and really enjoy something like that, I mean, it definitely sounds like something that would be pretty legit. So anyway, so moving on, I wanted to talk about, and I was actually kind of curious. I don't know if you guys have heard anything about this, what research that you've done, but I'm curious specifically when it comes to the roadmap of horror games and where they're going to be going. Is there anything that they're looking at developing for VR? Because I know VR is starting to become a big thing with the Oculus Rift and all this, and now you have Samsung that's giving out VR headsets, and I believe HTC is doing the same thing as well when you buy one of their phones, excluding the Note 7 because those aren't sold anymore because they spontaneously explode. But with that being said, I think we're seeing a significant increase in the amount of VR stuff that is available specifically with gaming. So within the horror genre, have either of you guys heard much about what it is that they're trying to do?
Yes, actually, the Oculus Rift is already even in its a developer kit stage. They have plenty of games revolving around it in that horror field. More specifically, you're looking at games like Emily Wants to Play. Even Slender has an Oculus option to it, or some of the built-in games in there, which has that element of scare. That's worse. If you're queasy to horror or just get scared easily, I'd highly recommend not doing any VR anything, because that fully immerses you in its entirety. I've messed around with plenty of them, and yeah, it is some scary ass shit when you're looking around and all you see is the environment of that horror thing, and all you hear is that environment thing. You don't hear anything else outside because of the way they designed the headphones on those things. It'll scare the shit out of anybody. I don't care who you are.
Interesting. Phil, have you heard anything about horror and VR and what they've got coming up?
No specific titles, but it is going to be the new way to play a horror game, because when you play a horror game, it's going to be about immersion into the environment.
Yeah. And
with PlayStation VR and the Oculus Rift, it's going to take over two of your senses, which is sight and sound. Mm-hmm. So your eyes will be covered up, so all you see is, like Matt was saying, the environment of the game, and all you're hearing is the environment of the game. So it's really going to put you into a horror scenario.
Yeah. Now, yes, I think it was yesterday or the day before, Phil, I sent you a link of something I had found on, I think it was on Facebook, and it was actually really interesting. What it is basically a contraption that you basically hook yourself up to. There's a harness that you wear, and what it does is it creates the ability to walk in place, almost like a treadmill. And I believe how it actually works is you put little slippers on your shoes, and it basically has a polished disc that you're standing on. So you actually can sit there, can move your feet, and you walk, and you apply pressure, but because of the slippers that you put on, it's no friction, so you're basically just walking in place. Mm-hmm. And what this harness does is it has like a metal pole that's supported up through the top of this device, and so you can actually sit there and you can go and you can actually sit down on it, and it will support your weight. But what it does is it allows you the ability to actually walk around. It's 360 degrees, it moves all the way around, but it allows you to get an even further immersion into the environment. And so within the scope of first-person shooters and racers and all this other genre, I think something like a horror movie, specifically like Five Nights at Freddy's or Resident Evil, something like that, because you have the ability to actually turn and run, the ability of a device like that being able to add just an added layer of immersion into horror games specifically, I think it'd be fantastic. And if e-cafes, pubs like that, if they were to set something like that, I think that would be phenomenally popular. So I know I showed that to you, Phil.
I know what you're talking about. I've actually seen that being demonstrated on a YouTube channel where the guy was playing Skyrim. He was using it and moving around that. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and that right there, not necessarily something you'd see in a home environment, but yes, in a gaming cafe, internet cafe of some sort of, even if I hope it ever, it becomes a thing again, arcades, they can bring that in there. It'd be amazing to see.
Yeah, I would be really curious to see how that pans out, just in general, not just to break away from the horror genre a little bit, to branch out into something like World of Warcraft or League of Legends or something along those lines, where you have the ability to be, or it's a mobile game, it's a large scale game, just to kind of see how it integrates. I would be kind of curious to see how that would wind up fleshing out with something like that. So.
You know how many gamers would lose weight if they played World of Warcraft on that thing? The stereotypical body shape of a gamer would change. It would change the game.
But it would.
The only thing I have about that game is, if it was a horror game, I don't take little steps, man. When I'm scared, I'm running full on. So I'll be like long strides and everything, and I'll be yelling. So that little platform is not going to be able to contain my strides.
It's conceivable. I don't know.
It's possible.
I mean, I'm sure it's something, they could build one for taller individuals, for people that have a longer step. I mean, because it's really it can kind of be customized to whoever the individual is. Like, someone who's a little bit bigger, they can have a stiffer spring. If someone that's a little bit lighter, they can have a softer spring. I'm sure that there's ways that they can kind of tweak it to be specific to the individual that's getting it.
Yeah. More likely they would
really fun.
Have it's not going to be a one size fits all type thing. Right now it is, because it's still something that they're working on. Nothing's set in stone as to what they're going to do.
If one of those exists, I am going to take my fat ass over there. I want to tell them to plug in a horror game, and I'm going to have someone film me.
Oh, I will film that. I will live stream the fuck out of that.
Because I will be yelling.
It will be glorious.
Running.
It will be absolutely glorious.
So the genre of horror is going to always constantly evolve. It's going to get bigger. It's going to get more real. They're already doing it even more so with more games that'll be coming through. So I see a lot of. I don't see this genre ever dying down. There's always going to be something to make it.
There's always going to be something. And I see in the chat room that Jeff mentions that Resident Hill will be coming. Or I'm sorry, not Resident Hill. Resident Evil will be coming to VR. I'm not sure which platform, but I know Jeff is pretty reliable when it comes to video game knowledge.
Yeah, more than likely it'll probably be on the PlayStation VR.
I'll play it.
That one's a lot of design there.
Should we live stream that just to see your reaction, even without the running thing?
I'll play it. I'll live stream it, and
You're gonna need two cameras on that one, because they're gonna have one for the game itself, and then one
for the game,
on
one that shows you exactly.
It'll be fun.
I think that pretty much wraps up what we've got for the horror genre. I did want to make sure that we mentioned that Matt is going to be live streaming on Halloween. Matt, what game are you going to be live streaming on Halloween? I already forgot.
It's actually Slender 2: The Arrival, which is the same creator who made Slender 1. After the huge success of that game, he got an actual larger budget and was able to create a sequel, higher graphics, more intensity. It's available on Steam and Xbox One, PlayStation 4. I'll be streaming that one there on the Xbox One, just because I'm used to that version. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be Probably the most scariest thing I'm ever going to do live, because I never completed that game. I've had it since the day it was released on Xbox One, and I don't know how far I'm going to get before I just, scare the shit out of myself, because it's only going to be me in my fucking apartment.
Yeah.
So there's no one else here, and I'm going to have the whole headphones, the whole bit. It's going to be fun. Check it out.
It's going to be glorious. That's going to be glorious. And
Yeah.
then also, before the show, the three of us were talking. We want to try and do a live stream sometime Sunday evening, probably around 5 o'clock. We haven't figured out what exactly we're going to be playing yet, because we all have a little bit different game library. So we got to figure out what game we all actually have that we can all play. But we'll probably be live streaming something for at least a couple hours on Sunday evening, starting around 5 o'clock or so. So if anybody's around and wants to join in or join us, watch a little bit, feel free. We'll be live streaming on our Twitch channel, and one or two of us will probably be streaming on our own channels on Twitch as well. And we can include that in the description of the video once we're done. But
all descriptions for our Twitch channel are already there and on our YouTube stuff here. You should be able to see it down below. Same thing with our Twitter. So follow us there as well, because we make announcements all the time on games that are being played, live streams, and just how we are all doing in general. So be sure to follow us there as well. We're constantly updated. I'm on it all the time, constantly putting out tweets here and there.
I try to throw up stuff there every so often as well.
Yeah. Also, be sure to check out our game plays that we have currently. The Kaizo series, our Throwback Thursdays. Every Thursday is a new old schooler, and I've started 3 new game series where I'm playing the game to its completion. Not like a completion style thing where you got to get everything, but basically playing the story modes to where it's done, where we beat the game. And that's going to be on Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill, and Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance on the Game Boy Advance. So check those out. We already have videos. Episodes have already been dropped. Check them out.
All right, Phil, any last words before we wrap this up?
I don't throw up ever.
Nope, but that's your final thoughts.
Ever.
Well, that was his words.
Don't throw up at all.
Be also on the lookout for later on our brutally honest game reviews. Andy Mann and Phil Stopp will be doing Overwatch, Battlefield 1.
Yeah, I've got
Gears
a bunch of
War.
Battlefield 1 that I need to edit down and get formed into something of a conscious thought, a single conscious thought.
And I'll be doing Titanfall 2 once I get my hands on it.
Well,
which will be tomorrow.
Titanfall 2.
You're getting Titanfall 2 as well?
Absolutely, and my brother as well. So
I think we may have found our game, because I was considering picking up Titanfall 2 as well, but we can figure that out after we're done. So
look forward to that stuff. Again, Twitter, we announce them all the time when they're gonna come, when stuff's gonna drop, and everything like that. So check it out, follow us. We appreciate you guys.
All right, for Phil Stopp, for Matt Man, and myself, Andy Man, that is all that we got for tonight. Thanks so much, guys, for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll see you in the next video.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace.